Hey, so I was just saying to Suze, I don't think we did a summary video last night from Sturgis. So this is going to kind of cover a couple of those days. Where do we wake up before Sturgis? always a challenge. Where were we 2 nights ago?
In the campground in the
Oh
KOA.
yeah. We're in that KOA.
Hardin,
right? Where the
Hardin, Montana.
Yeah, the Battle of Bighorn.
Oh, about 30K from there.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. So 2 nights of tenting later, how you feeling?
I feel great.
I feel all right. I think we've slept pretty good 2 nights ago and slept pretty good last night. Bird action, some weird stuff going on, but mostly I think we got a pretty good night's sleep, and we are off this morning to the Battle of Little Bighorn. Yeah, to check that out, and then from there to Sturgis. So that's the day. Hoping the clutch holds out. So that day we knew we wanted to get to Sturgis, but we also knew Sturgis was a distance, a ways to go. We didn't know if we'd be able to do it, especially because we wanted to visit the monument first. So we went to visit the monument. One funny thing with that, I was my clutch was not good, and when we got to the place where you pay, it was just an uphill, and there were a bunch of cars. I would say 8 cars in the line, and I knew I could not just keep starting my bike uphill doing that, so I had to blow by everybody and go park by the front of the line, and somebody yelled out like, "Hey, what are you doing?" and whatever, but then I just parked and got off the bike and walked back to where Sue was, and whoever yelled at me was not yelling anymore. They were nice once they realized. So at any rate, we nursed the bike, we got in there, we looked around a little bit, we went for a little ride, which I can show you a little bit of, to see the battlefield and some of the parts of it, and it was kind of interesting.
It was weird just seeing white gravestones occasionally through the thing. You'd see nothing, and then there'd be 5 or 6 or 2 or 3.
It's almost like they buried them where they fell, which I don't know if that's the case, but that's almost what it felt like when you were seeing these. And of course, it showed all of Custer's men. There was no monument to the Native Americans that I saw anywhere.
Not that I saw.
Yeah, anyway, it was interesting, especially after, liking Ron Negrini's song for so long, to actually see the area after visually sort of picturing it and then seeing it, how it's different. And anyway, that was cool. But perhaps cooler is we decided as we were leaving, we hadn't had a coffee, and we really should have a coffee before we try to make this distance ride. And so we were going to go back to a gas station and have a coffee, but on the way there was this Native American looking cafe, with teepees outside of it and all this paraphernalia. And so we went there, and as we were walking in, there were 3 gentlemen outside who were speaking some First Nations language. I couldn't tell what, but I thought that was kind of cool. I'd never kind of seen older men hanging around and speaking First Nations to each other. So anyway, we went in, we got our coffee, and at some point I was wandering around looking at stuff, and this gentleman and his wife, also First Nations, it turns out Kelly and Susan are their names, he starts telling me about things, and specifically he says, "You've probably heard some stories when you're over at the monument. Those are the stories that white people tell about what happened. I would like to tell you some of the story from our perspective." And he was Lakota, and he told us a couple of different stories. I mentioned a couple of them on the GoPro, so we can maybe hit those. But he was a fascinating guy, and he just wanted to teach. And if he found white people that were willing to listen, well, he actually said something really nice at some point. He said we were worthy of speaking to, or something that some people he doesn't even try. But for us, for whatever reason, he was happy to tell us his story on some of these events, and he had ancestors that were part of all of this, like grandparent ancestors, 2 or 3 generations ago. So
Stories have been handed down.
Yeah, and so it was fascinating.
They're artists. He
Yes.
does Indian hand drums, and so we have his website. We're going to check it out.
LakotaRedNations.com. For some reason I remember that. LakotaRedNations.com. We're going to check it out.
Not sure there's an S.
Yeah, he made it sound like there's... But anyway, charming people. But as we're talking to them, I'm thinking this is precious to be able to have this sort of dialogue with somebody, and I really appreciate it. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm thinking Sturgis is gone. There's no way, after spending so much time here in this cafe, there's no way we're going to make Sturgis. But
He was wrong.
I was wrong. When we left the cafe,
We really didn't have a lot of choice.
yeah, I mean, at some level, the clutch was getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and I could feel it getting worse and worse, and off we went, flying to Sturgis, and I don't remember a whole
We
lot.
weren't flying.
Well, we were almost flying. Anyway, it was a pretty quick riding we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 days or 5 days. I don't know. Do you remember anything exceptional happening on the ride to Sturgis? I'm sure I'm going to show you some GoPro stuff of things that happened, but you know,
It's pretty
that's the thing. If you almost don't share the stories right after, you sometimes forget some of these things that happen. But at any rate, we got to Sturgis at some point later in the day. After a long ride, we were very hot. Oh yeah, I remember we made a few stops along the way where we had to rehydrate and get pumped up, including one just about 40K away. Oh yeah, that's where we met the older gentleman that was, he was a local, and he was just chatting us up. We couldn't even understand half of what he was saying. He just went on a roll. But then he went and got pamphlets for us and was trying to help us out in all these ways.
With all the motorcycle rides in Sturgis.
Yeah, and so he was really kind of a cool guy, and we enjoyed that. And meanwhile, we're like drinking our Gatorade rehydrate formula stuff to try to get as many liquids back into us as we can.
And thank goodness we bought those water hydration packs.
Those Camelbacks.
In this heat, they have been very valuable.
Yeah,
We've
this
done
morning
longer stints because of it.
I messed up with mine this morning. I got a kink in the hose of the
And
thing,
you didn't let me
so
know.
I didn't test it ahead of time, and so yeah, the whole first stint today, which we'll tell you about in a moment. But I was no Camelback, and I can say I prefer having a Camelback available. I used it later today, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd even want one, but I don't even notice it.
Yeah, you don't notice
Until I
it.
go to unzip my jacket, and then I got to do it. But
Yeah, once you're riding, you don't notice it except when you want to drink. You put that tube through your helmet and you take a sip, and we've been filling it with ice water. It was still cold this afternoon.
It was, yeah.
And so you sip in this cold water while you're riding, which is very cool.
Well,
because
we put a whole bunch of ice in and then a little bit of water, so
Yeah.
it melted gradually.
these roads we're riding have virtually no shoulder. It's not at
No
all
traffic.
uncommon that there's almost nothing on the road as far as, you know, a place to pull over at a store or a church or whatever. There's nothing.
There were a couple of gas stations at different points. There was an
Yeah,
earlier
but you can
gas
go
station.
100 kilometers between things, and you know that's when these Camelbacks really help you stay hydrated without having to pull over. That's what we used to do, is just pull over all the time for breaks, but these are not good places to pull over. Plus, if you pull over, it's like stinking hot with the sun beating down on you, so you're almost defeating the purpose by standing out in the sun instead of moving with the wind blowing on you.
I felt so bad for all the cows and horses.
They
look
live
so
that
hot.
way. Yeah, they're outside. They're yeah. Okay, so getting back to Sturgis last night. Sturgis, we didn't do a whole lot. We met a couple of characters, a couple from Alberta actually, that we were chatting up, and they became sort of characters throughout the night that we kept running into because they were just kind of hanging out where our bikes were, and so every time we went down there, and where the door was, so every time we went down, and sometimes it took us a half an hour to get through that door because we were just chatting up with these guys. But otherwise, all we really did in Sturgis, and you motorcyclers out there are just going to go, all we did was walk the 2 miles downtown, and then walk around the downtown, which was pretty much deserted. In the middle of the week, it turns
3
out.
saloons open, that was it.
Yeah, and it turns out that Sturgis, of course, has their crazy time in August when it just gets, you know, inundated with everybody. But other than that, it's like weekends in the summer when it's busy. During the week, and we were there Tuesday night. Not a lot going on. So, like, 2 badass motorcycle people like us come to Sturgis, and it's now, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night. We decided to come downtown to see the action of Sturgis. There ain't no action. There ain't no.
I guess it's a Wednesday night.
It is a Wednesday night.
There's not a festival going on.
And there's not a festival going on.
Or a rally.
My goodness, we're not sure we're going to be able to find a restaurant. This is the first sort of main funky street we found, and we walked down like half of it. Well, I don't know half of it. Maybe it goes along. But so far,
It might be better.
I like it. We'll see. So anyway, it was still kind of cool to see it, to get the vibe, and we talked to those other guys about what it's like during the crazy time. We got some stories of Sturgis, but really our mind is still on getting home. And so I had luckily connected. It was Sturgis Motorsports. Connected with them. They were fantastic. So we got up this morning, we slept in, we had a great sleep, king size bed. It was fantastic. We had breakfast. We were the last ones to get into the breakfast room.
8:52 and it closes at 5.
And it closed at 9.
Or 9.
Closed at 9.
She said, you just made it.
Yep. And you know, we just slowly loaded up our bikes and stuff, and we got to the motorsport place shortly after 11. We had to be out of the hotel at 11. They opened at 11, and my goodness, they couldn't have been better. They took the bike right in. They thoroughly, so they did a whole bleeding of the clutch line and refilling of it, but they also did a full inspection everywhere. And basically the story is the line is fine, the connections are fine now, at least, because they made sure everything was really good. They also used suction to get all the air out, which we don't know if they did that in Spokane. So he says it should be good now. If it's not, it's my master cylinder, which is a big issue, I think. And so we don't know. So what I'm going to do is baby it, and we think we can get it all the way home, which is fine. And so we ended up leaving there at 1. And we thought of going...
We hadn't had any lunch. We thought there'd be something along the way.
Yeah. So by the way, one of these weird things with us is it turns out eating is optional. You don't think of that in a normal day when you have your rituals and you eat at certain times because you just do. When you're living like we do, sometimes you just don't get around to eating, and it's not like we're starved. Like I don't hang around at 1 going, oh, I haven't eaten, I'm starving. It's just like take off, but you just figure mentally I have to eat because we need to keep our energy up at some point. So we thought 1 o'clock, let's go an hour down the road and find a restaurant so that we can get, because we had 320K to get to a place called Pierre, which is, we could find we found this screaming motel deal at a Super 8, $60 American, breakfast included. And so we had this deal, but we thought, I don't know if we can get there. It was 320K or something, and we weren't leaving till 1. But off we went, and as soon as we got on, we look at our little devices, and what did it say?
The first city coming up was Pierre, the one we were going to.
Yeah, so it shows you all the cities on your journey. Pierre was the city.
What's ahead was 1 truck stop.
1 truck stop, and it was
170K
away.
170.
And I knew right on once I saw that, because Sue and I didn't talk about this. Once we were on the travel, that's when we kind of look at our GPS and figure out and I'm like, okay, she's gonna stop at the truck stop. We're gonna blast these 180K, and that's what we did. Cruising down these prairie roads. Not a lot fast. I mean, it's interesting, but it's a lot of the same. And we just went flying down there for 180K. Now I have some video to show you of that journey. There's another point I'll raise in just a moment, but because I don't have any video after that from the GoPro. The whole thing, when we were getting closer, when I was like within 20 or 10K, I'm like, okay, we're coming up to this sort of oasis in the desert. We've been riding through this nothing, and there's this truck stop coming up, and you could see it like 2K away and 1K away. And then I saw this like sign on the side of the road. The truck stop, by the way, was called MT35. And I saw this small sign with MT35 that said good food, cold beer, gas. And then I realized it was referring to this little tiny place. And as we went by, we could see this little tiny place.
I would buy it. I didn't dream that was a truck stop.
There were gas pumps outside, but old-fashioned looking gas pumps. And yeah, Sue went right by it. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, that's the oasis in the desert. If we don't stop in the oasis, we're in trouble. And so I was making some signals, and she also realized from the GPS that she'd went by it. And so
it said I had 500 meters to go, so I thought there was another thing coming up, but I quickly realized, nope.
So we scooted back anyway, filled up with gas, went in to pay for the gas, and there's this, I wish I'd gotten a picture of this dude, man. I can't even describe him. He's probably 80-some. I bet he's lived in this place all his life. He is so South Dakota. He just felt country, conservative politically, as we found out when we're kind of chatting with him a little bit. And no, but I'm just saying that's what he was. There's nothing wrong with saying somebody's liberal or conservative. That's what he was. But when we walked in, they were like, "Is there food here?" And he's like, "No, there's no food." And it's obvious it's the Sturgis effect. He was on the road to Sturgis, and there's nobody coming through during the week. So he probably has food on the weekends, I bet, but none during the week. So we had a nice lunch of Snickers bar. I had some Doritos and Gatorade. That's what he had available. But he allowed us to sit in his restaurant, cool down, and then he kind of hung with us.
He did.
He just kind of hang out and chatted about a bunch of stuff, and yeah, we went through quite a little myriad of things. Being careful around the political, because we do try not to be political on these trips, and so we kind of negotiated some of those issues as they came up. What? What is wrong with talking about it? Let's wait. That's weird. Anyway, so at any rate, we chat with him a little bit. Now, one interesting thing we want to talk about is as we're riding, it's weird, we were feeling things hitting our boots. I didn't know if Sue was feeling it. At first I thought it was like, I don't know, something was loose on the bike and hitting my boots, but that didn't make sense. You can't really see your boots when you're riding.
I thought it was gravel at first.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what is striking, but it was just continuous.
Oh yeah.
You get all these, and I realized at some point, it must be like cicadas or grasshoppers or something that are on the road and that jump up when we come and then strike our boots or our legs sometimes, occasionally our upper body, but mostly our lower body. And so when we went in there, I asked the guy, I'm like, are there cicadas or grasshoppers? He's like, oh yeah, those are grasshoppers. And he told us this funny story. So South Dakota, by the way, I saw in a little manual, it says ride free and take a risk and sit on this thing. South Dakota, you don't need to wear helmets, you don't need to wear protective gear, you don't need anything, and they almost encourage that. And so all the riders, not all the riders, but a lot of the riders in South Dakota have no helmet. Sometimes they have ball hats on, sometimes they don't even have ball hats on. They have shorts and t-shirts, sometimes sandals. And we're like, whoa. And so we said to the guy, or I made a little comment. I said, boys, if one of those people went through the Grasshoppers. And he said, well, let me tell you a story. And he told a story about this guy that came in that was trying to ride to Sturgis. And he was on the way to Sturgis, maybe, 100 miles from Sturgis or something like that.
Yeah, well, 170K.
And he's like, this guy was ready to turn around because he didn't have the gear, including anything on his head. And the Grasshoppers were getting him in the head. And they were getting him in the head because he was riding with others and he was back a little bit. So the ones in the front were stirring up the Grasshoppers. They were getting hit in the legs and the feet like we were. But by the time this guy came through, the Grasshoppers were higher, and he was getting them in the head and upper body. He had no windshield. He had no protection. And he was ready to go home. And this guy told him, either go ride at the front or stay far enough away from the people ahead of you so that you're not in that height of grasshopper. And apparently the guy came back on the way back and thanked him for the advice and all that kind of stuff. So that's another reason we wear protective gear. You just don't know what you're going to run into. And today our gear kept us from getting a lot of pain because those things hit and they hit. And I'm going to show you a picture of my radiator from my bike where you can kind of get a sense of what we're talking about. It's gross. It's disgusting, but it's what it is. You don't want to see our boots right now either.
Or our windshields.
Yeah. Okay, so other than that, sort of quick story is I'm gonna do another quick little video on this, but I stupidly put my helmet on my bike while I was trying to do something. It fell off. My GoPro snapped off my helmet. Again, second time on this trip. I got to fix that. I'm going to do a little video about this. Okay, so just a brief little video about GoPro stuff in case anybody who's watching this ever thinks they might want a GoPro, something they're doing. I'm learning some things along the way. This is going to be more do nots than do's, or it'll be a mix of do's and do nots. So one of the things is if you're a motorcycle rider, do not ever put your motorcycle helmet somewhere where it could just fall easily, like on the seat of your motorcycle or on some bag on your motorcycle or whatever. Always make sure it's 100% secure. All right. Now, you will not do that. Although that makes perfect sense. When we get tired and we get off the motorcycle and whatever, we put our motorcycle helmet in places we shouldn't, that are the most secure, and they fall. It's happened twice to me on this trip. My motorcycle helmet has fallen because I have been negligent in terms of really making sure it was secure. Just had it sitting on the seat usually. And when that happens, this happens. The GoPro, which was attached over here, snaps off. And it comes off very easily because it's just being held by that little bit of adhesive. And so the larger point is, yeah, take good care of your helmet. But when you don't, know that this will happen. And if you go on a trip like this, bring some of those extra adhesive pads. They have allowed me to keep being able to do this videoing because I can just basically take that old one off, reaffix the new thing, and then it works perfectly fine again. All right, so don't be a moron, but when you are, be ready. That's my point. But that means no GoPro footage from the truck stop on, which is okay. There wasn't a whole lot happening anyway.
It looked just the same as the first part did. It was
pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, but there was one weird thing, and I know you know it, and I wanted to talk to you about it on live on video. I mean, we've always got wind. We're always battling wind, but there was that
I got knocked once.
Right and then left, right?
Yeah.
Like I could see it happening to you, and it felt
Yeah.
it happening to me, where it's like a big gust brought us right and literally, pushed us right. And then immediately something else pushed us the other way. It's almost, you almost start to feel like there's ghosts at play or something. You feel like, and I could see it with Sue too, that she hit the same weird little airflow thing. I don't know what the heck it was, but that was the weirdest wind gusts I've ever
That was very
felt.
strong. It was one of the strongest ones.
Oh, it's strange. Yeah.
It's
So
on
anyway.
top of a hill.
Yeah, that's where the winds is the worst, of course, and that's the thing. By the way, we notice with these prairies, it's
And
they're not
truck go
flat
by
after, but it didn't
But
cause
it. Didn't cause it, did it?
Yeah, these prairies are not flat. There's a lot of up and down, but there's treeless. It's just you can
Totally.
see.
There'd be a hill up and down, then there'd be a long, like 3 kilometers straight, and then up and down.
Yeah, not the most exciting ride. But the other good news from this gentleman at the truck stop, what he told us was, Pierre, we said, when do the prairies kind of end? And he said, well, basically at the river. And I said, the river where Pierre is, right? And he's like, yeah, at that river. So we're now there.
Yeah.
So I think tomorrow on we'll have less prairies. We'll see it kind of go more to treat areas and that kind of stuff, and that's cool. Yeah, and we made it all the way to Pierre despite not leaving till 1. That was at least 200 miles or more, 320K, I think we did. So good progress. We're starting to taste Canada. We're starting to get there. We feel good. My clutch is now super strong. I know how to baby it a little bit better, and I'm going to do that. I'm pretty sure I can get the bike home without having any other issues. And I don't know, we'll walk around Pierre today. We'll grab something to complement our Snickers bar and Doritos. We'll have a slightly better meal. The only other thing we had was a continental breakfast at the hotel this morning. So time to get something a little more nutritious into us. Hopefully get a good night's sleep. We got 2 queen beds. We can both stretch out. And then tomorrow we're on our way to, well, we don't know.
We don't know yet.
We don't know. But we do know one thing. We think now we're going to follow a route that takes us over Lake Michigan, right? It's not over Superior. I think so. Over Michigan, brings us into Canada somewhere around Sault Ste. Marie, I think.
We don't really want to get caught up in Chicago traffic,
Yeah.
even though Chicago tempts us a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
We now, by the way, when we've looked at distances to Toronto, it's always said things like 4 days and 30 hours or something. Now when we look at it, it says things like 22 hours. The days are gone. So, 22 hours of riding is still 5 days of riding.
For us.
6 days of riding. So 7 days of riding. Who knows? So we're still a good week away at least. But
as long as it doesn't rain.
Yeah, and as long as
Too
stuff
hard
doesn't
anyway.
happen, and goodness
We don't mind
knows.
a bit.
We've had no rain since Spokane. Not a hint. We haven't even had
We didn't
clouds
have any
since
in Spokane,
Spokane.
did we?
No, we
I don't
didn't.
think we had
No.
any since we went
Tofino.
to Tofino, from Nanaimo to Tofino,
That's right. No rain since Tofino.
which was June 28th,
And what's today?
July 10th,
Yeah.
so 12 days.
So like 2 weeks,
Yeah,
and it's
almost.
not just no rain, sun, full
Lots
sun,
of sun.
all the time. So yeah, cool. So anyway, we're gonna do Pierre tonight. We're gonna launch tomorrow, and yeah, we're getting there, and we're feeling pretty good. Everything's pretty positive with us right now. So just the home stretch, just got to make it back home. That's cool. That's our day. 2 days.